Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Time to move? Skip the hassles of selling during the holiday season and sell your home directly to Opendoor. Request an all-cash offer in minutes, close, and get paid in days. You can even pick your close date so you can move after New Year's. Start your move at Opendoor.com or download the Opendoor app. Opendoor is represented by Opendoor Brokerage Inc., license 02061130 in California, and Opendoor Brokerage LLC in its other markets. Terms and conditions apply.
It is Monday, November 4th. You know what Garfield always says about Mondays.
Briefly, I hate Mondays. Just hate them. Therefore, I decree...
And in this case, it is the Monday before Election Day. And the vibe among political junkies, I gotta tell you, it's pretty similar.
How are you all feeling going into Election Day? Silence.
Listen to that silence. I think I would speak for everyone when I say anxious.
That's Ari Berman. He writes about voting rights over at Mother Jones.
Exhausted. I just kind of want it to be over, to be honest with you.
Kadia Goba writes about politics over at Semafor.
I'm ready for, I would say the day after the election, but I'm sure it's going to last a few days.
And Isaac Saul is the brains behind the nonpartisan newsletter Tangle.
Maybe the week after the election. I'm excited for that.
Ari, Kadia, Isaac, I called them all up because tomorrow is going to be a big day. But as Isaac just alluded to, we may not know how big for a while.
I feel like we all kind of grew up at a time when you had election results on election night. Like if you just stayed up for them, there they were. Is that what you're expecting this election night?
I do feel like the closer it is, the longer it'll take.
This is Ari.
And by all indications, this could be the closest one since 2000. It's also not just the presidential races. Like the U.S. House is likely to be decided by what happens in New York and California. And those are states that have mail voting where you can return your ballot as long as it's postmarked by Election Day. It can arrive up to a week later, I believe. So that means that the House might be uncalled for a week or longer.
In 2016, the race was called at 3 a.m. election night. But in 2020, it was not called until Saturday morning, 4 days after the polls closed. That is because of the sheer number of mail-in ballots. With the pandemic in full force, more than 65 million people voted by mail. This year, there's no pandemic, but plenty of people have gotten used to voting from home. And while some states have made it easier to count those votes in a timely fashion, others, not so much. Like, here's Ari again.
There's a number of states that were told, please change the law to allow election officials to count early and mail ballots before Election Day in places like Wisconsin. And some of those legislatures just refused. And so, yeah, I mean, that means it could take longer. And it means that all the externalities that we've been worrying about, right? Like how many ballots are going to be counted? How many are going to be disqualified? What are the lawsuits going to say? What are the recounts going to say? All of that could end up being a really big deal. And then it's also, they've created a situation in which things can be weaponized in the same way as 2020, even though everyone knows full well how to avoid a 2020 type situation right now.
But here's the thing. Even though we all know this year's results are likely to take a while, all of us, Ari, Kadia, Isaac, me, we are going to be staying up late trying to understand what's going on anyway. So, today on the show, how to election night. The counties, states, districts to watch while you wait for the top of the ticket to sort itself out. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance. They'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Support comes from USA for UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. People facing war and violence are now facing winter far from home in temporary shelters and with little to keep them warm. As humanitarian needs in Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, and beyond increase, ensuring continued funding to help the most vulnerable is more urgent than ever. You can help. Donate today to help keep families safe and warm this winter. UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, works around the clock to support the most vulnerable throughout the year, providing blankets, cash to buy warm clothes, fuel for heaters, and shelter. It's during the winter months that your support makes all the difference. Help protect refugees and people forced to flee as they face winter far from home. Your gift is matched for a limited time. Give now at unrefugees.org/winter.
Okay. So just to start us off, polling shows Harris and Trump are basically tied at this point. I guess I'll start here. Do you guys believe that's true? Do you think that they're actually tied in reality when the results come in? Or do you think the polling's missing something? Because the polling has missed something for a few cycles here. Isaac?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen in the last few elections is that there's been pretty consistent, systematic underestimating of one party or the other. It's sort of a misnomer that it's always Trump. I mean, in 2022, Democratic support and enthusiasm was underestimated. In 2020, Trump was underestimated, but a lot of that had to do with the pandemic. And I think get out the vote campaign struggled, which is what Democrats are good at. And that's the reason that the vote didn't match the polls. And in 2016, the polls were pretty much within the margin of error. Everybody just ignored the fact the race got tight in the final month. And so the forecasters were kind of wrong and the pundits were wrong. So I'm fairly confident that the polls are going to be within the margin of error. I think I'd be surprised if they're really, really off. The interesting thing is that they're probably going to sort of tilt, the results will tilt away from the polls in one direction or the other pretty much across the board. So there's a good chance, either Harris or Trump comes away with what looks like a landslide where they win 5, 6, 7 battleground states, even though the race might be really, really close.
Yeah, you released this very spicy map
yeah,
a week or two ago that I want to put before the crew here because this is the it's a wacky map. Your map, Electoral College map, is you're predicting Kamala Harris will lose, but that she'll win Pennsylvania and she'll win North Carolina. Can you start out by explaining why? And then can I ask Kadia and Ari to weigh in on what you think about the fundamentals here behind Isaac's reasoning?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I'm based in Pennsylvania and I'm on the ground here in Philly. I grew up in Bucks County, which is a bellwether county in this bellwether state. And what I'm seeing is that Kamala Harris is running a really, really good campaign in PA. I think they're organized. I think they're dumping a ton of money into it. I think they have a popular Democratic governor.
So Pennsylvania feels safer to you?
Pennsylvania feels safer to me specifically because of how the campaign's being run and the fact that the suburban voters and the suburban women are going to decide the election here, which I don't think Trump has done anything to kind of assuage their fears about him.
Why North Carolina?
It's just all demographic shifts. I mean, it's shifted that way every election for the last 10, 12 years. It's been getting bluer and bluer. And the polls are really, really tight. They're really close. And I think Kamala Harris has made North Carolina a huge priority. She's visited it more than almost any other state And they have Mark Robinson running for governor, who is basically, the most unlikable candidate possible, imaginable for moderate voters. And I think he's going to impact the race even at the top of the ticket just by driving turnout among Democrats and people who are, genuinely scared of him.
Okay, but your map also relies on Kamala Harris losing Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. That's a lot of states to lose. And I guess I can kind of see your reasoning, which is the Arab American vote in Michigan and maybe the Latino vote in Nevada. Tell me more about why you think those are looking not so good for her.
Yeah, the Arab American vote in Michigan is definitely part of the calculation, and the internal polling that we have has shown a race that's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Donald Trump is touring the state, talking about how he's pro-Muslim, showing this endorsement he got from a popular Muslim mayor, talking about how he's going to end the war, leaking stuff to Times of Israel about how he's pressuring Netanyahu to wrap things up, while Kamala Harris is bringing out Liz Cheney and Bill Clinton, who's telling Arab Americans they should, not care quite as much about Palestinian death in Gaza. It doesn't strike me as a particularly focused message campaign from the Harris team there right now.
Kadia, I'm kind of curious what you think about this map. I know that it's just one person's map. It relies on so many different things going various ways, but I'm kind of curious if it links up with your understanding of the fundamentals of this race right now.
I would largely agree. I thought Michigan was going to be a problem from the beginning. It continues. People are still going to her rallies. When you talk to Muslim Americans, they are not relenting, and people are really hurt about this. What I don't agree with is North Carolina, because I feel there is a big problem with Black voter turnout right now, and they are doing a get out to vote. They've helped the margin a little, but it was 77,000 people down, Black people down from 2020, which is insane. But also, there's this other dynamic a lot of people aren't paying attention to. In North Carolina, the youth vote from 18 to 24, they're actually going more conservative, which I think is interesting.
I would say that I agree with some things and I disagree with some things. I was just in Wisconsin, and I think that if I had to put my money on it, I would assume that Harris is going to win Wisconsin because they've won so many close elections in Wisconsin in recent years, the Democrats. I mean, they've basically won 3 out of 4 close state Supreme Court elections. They won a close governor's race.
And this really comes down to Dane County, right? Madison and the turnout there.
Well, I mean, the thing is in Wisconsin, Dane County, which includes Madison, is increasing. So not just Madison, but its suburbs are increasing. It's getting bluer. Trump is not especially popular, not just in Milwaukee, but in the suburbs around Milwaukee. So I think it's going to be close, but if I had to bet, I would say that Harris wins Wisconsin. I agree that Michigan is probably the most problematic of the blue wall states. There's been a real failure of outreach, I think, by the Harris campaign. In other states, like in Georgia, they have convinced Arab American voters to go with a message that is basically Harris could be better, but Trump is worse, which I think seems perfectly accurate, but they have for some reason not been able to break through on that message in Michigan. The other thing that's problematic for Harris is she just doesn't feel like, with the exception of North Carolina, that she's expanded the map that much in these 7 states. I mean, you have to say that Nevada is leaning red because of the early voting numbers. Arizona has been leading red in all the polls, and just immigration being such a big deal there. North Carolina looks pretty good, but as you said, Kadia, Democrats have lost a lot of close elections there recently. So it's hard to be that confident about a state that they haven't flipped since 2012. I also really, really worry about a situation in which it's 270 to 268 on the electoral map, and the amount of post-election challenges that can happen if Trump only needs to flip one state to somehow or another become the president again.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about how all this translates to election night watching strategy. What are the early signs you guys are going to be looking for what way this election is going? And it's interesting because each of you, when you spoke to my producer, each of you flagged New York as a place you're going to be watching? Because obviously New York is on the East Coast, so the returns will come in probably a little bit earlier than other places. But it's a reliably blue state. So I'm kind of curious why New York is at the top of each of your lists. Like, Kadia, I know that you've reported from here. I'm sort of curious why New York is at the top of your list.
It's obviously those 5 seats that were flipped in 2022, right? That surprised a lot of Democrats because they weren't ready. Also, the 2 in California.
These are the congressional seats.
Yes, the congressional seats in both New York and California, more in New York. The issue is neither Democrats or Republicans think they can hold all 5 of them. And I think that is extremely interesting. I did a piece last week saying that Democrats don't think they're going to flip all of them. Republicans don't think they're going to hold all of them. But New York in particular, I do not think they're going to win New York 17.
New York 17 is Mike Lawler. He just came in last term, right?
Yes, he did. And he's running up against Mondaire Jones, who had previously had a district up in that area in Westchester-ish, Rockland County, but was redistricted out. He is not as strong as a lot of people. When I talk to Democrats, they always refer to them as the weakest link.
It's interesting. I live in the Hudson Valley, and the county that I live in, Ulster County, has 2 swing districts. So I am now a vaunted swing voter. I'm basically like an honorary Pennsylvanian at this point. And I can tell you, like, the lines are long here. And it's an interesting microcosm because it is a blue state, but this is much more of a swing area in that you have these kind of small bluish cities, but then you have this surrounding rural countryside. So it's not unlike parts of Wisconsin or parts of Pennsylvania or Michigan in that sense. And so it's an interesting bellwether because of how well Dems can turn out their voters in these bluer cities, and then how much they can keep the Republican margins down in the rural areas. Because one of the things we're seeing, I think, and Isaac, you're probably seeing this in your data, Republicans are doing very, very well in rural turnout. It's one reason why their early voting numbers are so good in places like Nevada, for example. And Democrats are not turning out early in the same kind of numbers.
Yeah, Isaac, you've said Mike Lawler, this guy in New York, the Republican who's, up for re-election, he's like a canary in a coal mine for you. Like, if you see him winning, it'll color how you see the rest of the race around the country?
Yeah, I mean, the central reason why is Mike Lawler won a race in 2022 in a district that he wasn't necessarily expected to win in. And if he loses that seat, it's an early sign for Democrats that the House might be a little bit more favorable for them, that the conditions electorally might be a little bit more favorable for them.
What people keep forgetting why these races are going to be so difficult is that the immigration issue in New York was not a thing in 2022, and now they have it. Now it's an issue. Also, Republicans did a really good job with messaging on crime. So it's like they're starting all over again.
The only flip side to that is that abortion is on the ballot in New York with this ballot initiative that would kind of enshrine like a state version of the ERA. That is, I think, resonating with some people, and I think could bring some more Democrats out. And of course, that's a strategy that's been replicated in other places. Like there's going to be 10 states that have abortion rights ballot initiatives.
And they're important states. There are states like Arizona. There are states like Florida. There are states that are really important for the electoral map.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the conventional wisdom says that everyone is focused on the top of the ballot, and that's going to motivate them to vote. But that might not be the case.
We will be back after a quick break. This show is brought to you by Discover. Have you heard about Doublenomics? It's okay if you haven't. It's extremely niche and practiced by Discover. Here's an example. Discover automatically doubles the cash back earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back into $300. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. This episode is brought to you by Saks.com. There is joy in finding the perfect gift for the ones you love. But it can be a challenge. Saks.com's holiday gift guide makes it easy. Whether you are surprising your hard-to-shop-for sister with a Chloe bracelet bag or gifting your partner a memorable scent from Gucci, At Saks.com, there is holiday inspiration for every personality on your list. If you go to their website, there is even a tab specifically for gifts where you can hunt for the perfect item for the pickiest shopper in your life, from Prada sneakers to Gucci lipstick. Saks.com's handpicked guide can help take the stress out of the holidays. And don't forget about yourself. You can add instant cheer to your home with some bright decor or bundle up in a scarf coat from Totem to stay warm all season long. Find gifts guaranteed to bring joy to everyone this holiday season at Saks.com. That is Saks.com for the ultimate holiday gift guide and all the shopping inspiration you need.
So, Ari, I want to move on to voting rights and kind of what you're looking at for Mother Jones, because your whole focus is access to the ballot. Just in the last week, we've seen some stuff happening with the Supreme Court, basically saying Virginia can kick people off the ballot. It was a strange opinion, frankly, because it's so close to the election. I think it was pretty unexpected. What are you watching in terms of how people are voting and whether they will have access to voting in the way that they should?
Yeah, well, obviously late breaking disputes. The Republicans really ramped up their litigation in the run up to the election. So a lot of cases are pending and unusually close to the election before state Supreme Courts and possibly going to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Normally, the Purcell principle would mean that these wouldn't be decided now, right?
Well, the Purcell principle means whatever the Republicans on the Supreme Court want it to mean. I mean, it's clear that it's a principle that they're happy to disregard. They've already disregarded it in numerous instances. They've reinstated a proof of citizenship law in Arizona close to the election. So obviously, I'm watching, what are the laws in terms of access to the ballot, but also like what are the ballots that can be challenged after the fact? Because if it's close, there's going to be a lot of these challenges. And how is the election in Pennsylvania going to be decided by undated mail ballots that weren't put in a second secrecy envelope? I mean, this sounds crazy, but if it's a Bush versus Gore scenario, and we're talking about, a few thousand votes or even a few hundred votes, which is not inconceivable based on how close the polls are, these kind of technical things could really matter a lot.
Are Democrats and Republicans both preparing equally legally for what's about to happen?
Yes, but I think the difference is that the Republican election denial apparatus is so much stronger than it was in 2020. I mean, in 2020, it was really like the Four Seasons Total Landscaping, Rudy Giuliani hair dye down his face form of election denial. Now they're organized. I mean, they're organized in all of these swing counties. And so if there are disputes about it, they may have people in the inside. At the very least, there'll be a much more organized presence on the outside. And I think they feel like they've gotten enough favorable decisions that they might be able to throw out enough votes to actually matter this time.
Isaac, I know last time around you started a mega thread of here are all of the conspiracy theories. Please thread them to me so I can look into them. Are you going to do the same thing this year? Have you already started it? What's the plan?
Yeah, there's an election fraud thread already begun on my account where I'm tracking a lot of the claims. Unfortunately, unlike 2020, the fire hose is kind of already started. Look, I'll say election fraud, voter fraud happens in basically every election. And so some of the things that pop up, 1 in 50 are legit, or there's something to them that probably needs to be investigated. In fact, just yesterday, there was some attorney from Michigan who was claiming that he found, 50 voters who were voting with the same ID or from the same address. And he had this data set that he claimed he FOIA'd and nobody had access to it, but he was sharing screenshots of it. It looked very suspicious to me. And it turned out that there was actually a glitch in Michigan's QVC file that their Secretary of State came out and explained. But by the time the explanation came out, and even the Trump campaign said, we had our eyes on the ground, we figured it out, it wasn't voter fraud. There's just thousands and thousands of people on X who believe that 150,000 people voted illegally in Michigan.
So there's a lot of noise, is what you're saying, and more noise than last time.
Way more noise. And I'm noticing a different trend from last time. In 2020, we had a lot of videos of election workers, famously in Georgia, doing things that looked maybe vaguely suspicious and all these theories built around them. This time, people are doing things like this guy did. They're FOIA requesting, a voter file. And then they're trying to interpret the data without any kind of expertise or understanding of what they're looking at. And so I'm seeing a lot of things like somebody sees a monastery where a bunch of nuns live and there's 80 votes that were registered to this monastery. And then they're saying, one person voted 80 times from the same address or whatever it is. And they do their quote unquote investigation when it takes me 10 minutes to pick up the phone and call the address and find a woman who works there who says, oh yeah, we have a bunch of sisters who live on campus and they all vote. And it's like, this isn't voter fraud. It's just actually 80 people who live at one address. But by the time we figure it out, this tweet's been shared by Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and it's been viewed millions of times, and it's just gone.
Okay, you're totally terrifying me now.
I do not have good news about this particular issue. I think, the community note stuff is actually semi-helpful. The issue is that it's always late. It takes hours and hours and hours for it to be updated after this content's been shared. And a lot of it's being amplified by the guy who owns Twitter. And it is creating a mess already where I know, I have a readership that's very diverse politically. And I am already hearing from a lot of them a lot of Trump supporters and Republican voters who don't think Kamala Harris can win the election without stealing it. And that's what Donald Trump's saying. It's what Elon Musk is saying. It's what his surrogates are saying. And so, this is a coin flip race. And yet a big chunk of the country already believes that Trump is, ordained and that he has it locked up and he's dominating and he's going to win. And if he doesn't, I think it's going to be really scary for the first few days after all the votes are counted.
Kadia, here's my question for you. Given what Isaac is saying, I feel like I should almost not be speaking to you guys about an election night plan. I should be talking to you about an election week plan. Because I was looking back at what our show did last time around, 2020. And, by the day after the election, people were saying, well, it looks like Joe Biden's won, but we can't really say that. And there are a few little videos of people getting upset at polling sites, but it was pretty mild. What Isaac is laying out is something that's less mild. So how are you preparing for the few days after the election? How do you think a listener should be?
That's such a tough question. I mean, don't be presumptuous about anything. Be careful what you're looking at online. I mean, I'm just going to be paying attention, calling election officials on the phone. It's funny, you're thinking about this, and I'm concerned about January 6th, to be honest with you. But that's because I was in the Capitol, and I know that feels like a long time away, but it just feels like a sprint in between when they call the election and that time. And I'm just ugh.
Well, I feel like no one's not worried. You know what I mean? That's what I'm hearing from all of you guys. Everyone's like, I feel like everyone here is hoping for a blowout in some way, in one way or another, because it will make life easier. Is that fair?
Does it? I'm not even sure if a blowout will, because the first reaction I'm sure I'm going to hear is, I thought this was going to be a really tight race. It's what's going on? Because people just don't have an understanding and they just don't have trust in the system. So I don't know. Blowout scares me.
Isaac, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I totally hear what Kadia is saying. I personally definitely hope the race is not close either way. I think it'll simplify things a little bit, even if it's just, to Ari's point, that we don't have weeks of actual court decisions that are going to litigate who the winner is. I would much prefer that. But yeah, look, I mean, we live in like I said, this kind of corrupted information ecosystem where I think everybody can go out and affirm their own biases online if they want to. So it's a scary moment. And I don't feel optimistic about kind of the way Americans are approaching and thinking about election results right now.
Ari, Isaac, Kadia, I'm really grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Even if your message is horrific. Kadia Goba is a political reporter at Semafor. Isaac Saul is the founder of the Tangle newsletter. And Ari Berman is a voting rights reporter over at Mother Jones. And that's the show. Just a reminder, all week long, this feed has got you covered when it comes to the election.
And on Friday, you're going to really want to tune in for The Surge, which is our weekly roundup of what the hell just happened in politics. It's me and Jim Newell, Slate's political guru. It's a little like a regular show, but more like listening to what a bunch of political junkies talk about around the water cooler. And there's going to be so much to talk about. The thing is, if you want to hear The Surge, you gotta join Slate Plus. It's our membership program. Right now, I think it is clear that getting unvarnished news and opinions from people you trust is more essential than ever. So, we're asking that you support what we do. And in exchange, get these little bonus episodes. So, subscribe now on Apple Podcasts. You can just click try free at the top of the What Next page. Or visit slate.com/whatnextplus to get access wherever you listen. The Surge will be waiting for you on Friday after lunch, and I'll catch you there. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. We are led by Alicia Montgomery. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you back here next time.